Hey friends, welcome to class today. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to continue our discussion about understanding argument, understanding the pieces that make a good argument. Before we get into the lesson though, I want to make sure that you have all your materials ready. So if you could pull out your notes from last week about identifying argument, and also if you could please get out the article that we read yesterday. Is binge watching a harmless pleasure or a harmful addiction? This is the article we're going to be reading together. And then if you could also get out the assignment, understanding argument. If you could have both of those open as a tab, then you're going to be ready to go. Okay? So by way of review, I want to start by reviewing the terms that go with argument. Okay? So when we talk about identifying argument, it's important to remember that an argument has parts to it, okay? So the first part of an argument is the claim. And the claim is the main argument or position that the writer or speaker is making. An example of this might be something like, we should ban the use of drinking straws to protect the ocean, okay? So that would be a claim that someone might make as an argument. The reason is the logical explanation for such a claim. And an explanation for that claim might be that sea turtles and other sea life are becoming endangered due to the amount of plastic trash that ends up in the ocean. And finally, our third term that we use when we're talking about argument is evidence. And evidence are those facts, statistics, quotations, anecdotes that support our reason. Okay? And one of those might be, for example, according to seaturtles.org, plastic pollution impacts critically endangered sea turtles at every life stage. Okay? That's an example taken from seaturtles.org. And as we talked about previously, we also evaluate whether or not the evidence presented is strong enough to support that claim. Okay? So we're going to continue talking about that today, but we're going to get some more practice in by looking at that article. Okay? So our targets for today are, I can identify claims, reasons, and evidence in an article. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to make sure we can do today. We're going to make sure that I can identify a claim, a reason, and evidence in an argument. And the second thing we're going to work on today is I am able to evaluate the evidence. I'm able to make a decision on whether or not that evidence is strong enough to support the reason and the claim. Okay? So the article that we're looking at that we've already read is binge watching a harmless pleasure or harmful addiction? And binge watching is certainly something that's happening quite a bit, especially with everyone home with COVID-19. People are finding their favorite shows to watch. So as we read yesterday, the first paragraph just introduces us to that term binge watching, explains what it is, tells us how many people admit to doing it, right? And then it asks that question, okay, that this article is going to evaluate this position. Is it bad for you or is it good for you? Is binge watching harmful or harmless? Is it, are there good things about it, okay? Now, one of the great things about using this article is the editors have put subtitles or subheadings for us that pretty much give us the claim, okay? So this text feature is going to start by giving us the claim. The first claim we see is binge watching leads to beneficial social connections. So I can know as the reader, this claim is supporting that binge watching is harmless. In fact, it might even be good for you. So I'm going to use our features in Google Docs. And I'm going to go ahead and highlight this, okay? I'm going to highlight it yellow, and I'm going to put a comment out to the side. I'm going to remind myself this is the first claim. You could also write claim number 1. But this is the first claim or argument being made in this article, that binge watching leads to beneficial social connections, okay? Now I'm going to listen for the reason. What is the reason why the author is saying this is true? So I'm going to look at this next paragraph. Binge watching creates a sense of community around a show, something experts call a shared cultural space. This common ground allows viewers to discuss and enjoy the show with everyone from a coworker to the stranger in line at the grocery store. Instead of feeling lonely or isolated, this shared space makes it easier to relate to other people and share personal perspectives. I think that I hear the reason being binge watching allows for a shared cultural experience. It allows me to connect with people, maybe some people I don't know, like in the grocery store, or people I do know, like people I work with or my fellow classmates, okay? So I think this first sentence right here is probably the best example of the reason, okay? The reason to support this claim. Now, as I am going through and sharing my thinking, I want you to be marking your text as well, okay? So have your article open and go ahead and add the annotations just like I am, so that when you go back and work on this on your own, you have these examples, okay? So far, I have identified the claim and I've identified the reason. Now I'm looking for evidence, okay? Now, as we talked about last week, when we're looking for evidence, we want to look for things like, for example, according to, or we want to look for titles of other sources, other articles, other books. We want to make sure that we're finding anything that the authors use to support the argument, okay? So I'm going to look down here and see. It looks like I have here from reading this yesterday, I remember this is about romantic relationships. But here I see a title of another article. It says, a study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that binge watching can help long distance relationships by replacing shared activities like going to dinner together and having mutual friends. So here the author is citing, providing evidence from another source, an outside source. In this case, this Journal of Social and Personal Relationships. Okay? So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to say evidence for claim number 1. Okay, this is the evidence. So I can go back and look at the way I've annotated the text and I'm able to identify the claim. It's this bolded subheading. That text feature really helps me out. I see that first reason, right? Binge watching creates a sense of community. And then I can see my evidence is from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships. So now here's where I'm going to add this to my chart, okay? So we're going to write down what is that first claim. And I'm going to go ahead and put it in my own words. Sometimes it helps us in our notes to paraphrase something in our own words. So I'm going to write binge watching helps create social connections and a sense of community, right? So that's my note there, but I'm going to go back and I think instead of trying to paraphrase the first reason, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just copy that, okay? And I'm going to add that to my chart. So Control C, Control V, hopefully. Let's try again. Control C. I'm going to copy that and we're going to go back here and we're going to paste it. Okay, now remember when we copy something, we want to make sure that we put the quotation marks around it so that we're reminded we copied it word for word. We don't want to claim something as our own words if we've copied it, okay? So we put those quotation marks. And then just another little reminder about citing textual evidence. Remember, if something already has quotation marks, we put that single quotation mark in there. All right, so then my evidence. I'm going to go back and I'm going to grab this whole sentence, okay? Because this is where my evidence is for claim number 1. So I'm going to click copy and I'm going to add it to my chart. Again, I want to make sure I put quotation marks around it. Okay. So now I've modeled for you how we identify our claim, reason, and evidence. So that's the first thing that we're working on. That's our first target for today. Our second target is evaluating that evidence. Okay, so there's this question here in the chart: evaluate this evidence. Does it support the reason? Why or why not? It definitely supports the reason, I think, because it references this journal of social and personal relationships, and it tells me that that journal article found that binge watching can actually help people in a long distance relationship. So I'm going to answer this in a complete sentence. Yes, this evidence supports the claim by citing an outside source and giving information that agrees with the claim. I might also say I might say I think the evidence could be stronger if the author quoted from the journal article. Because that's something we've talked about, right? When you quote from your evidence, it's actually stronger than just generally talking about it, okay? So at this point, what you're going to do is you're going to go back to the article, okay? We've talked about how our claim is going to be that bold subheading, okay? So now at this point in our conversation, we're going to do this together, okay? We're going to identify our claims, our reasons, and evidence all together, okay? And so at this point in the lesson, I would direct the students to have a discussion. And as mentioned in the lesson plan, I often use a random drawing technique, popsicle sticks, or some kind of seating chart that I have. And I will skip a person, but I would make sure each student has a chance to participate in the discussion, helping identify claims, reasons, and evidence. And then as a group, we would discuss whether or not we felt like the evidence for the second claim was sufficient. After students complete that portion of the assignment, then they would work independently. The article has 4 more claims, 4 more sets of reasons, and 4 more sets of evidence. So they would complete those on their own. And this chart would then be submitted as evidence of their work for a formative assessment. Thank you very much.